fact, let's bring Robert Jenrick into the conversation now. He's the Immigration Minister and the MP for Newark. Robert, lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you for coming on. We've heard the Home Secretary speaking in very bullish terms about the immigration policy and the fact that she thinks that Labour have been letting down the country, that Keir Starmer is siding with the lefty lawyers who are stopping deportations of rapists and murderers. You're big on talk, but not on action, Robert, because as Labour point out, you've sent more Home Secretaries to Rwanda than actual deportees.
Well, good morning, Camilla. Well, we want to send more people to Rwanda. We want to get that scheme up and running. It is unfortunately being stuck in the courts at the moment, but that's not the totality of our plan. We're working on many other fronts at the same time. We've signed a brilliant deal with Albania that's reduced the number of people crossing from Albania from 30% this time last year to 4% today. We're working with France, with Italy, with other countries to make sure that we have stronger defences on the northern French coast. And here in the UK, we're making it much more difficult for people to work illegally, to get housing illegally and to make a life here, as well as, of course, making sure that when illegal migrants do come here, they are accommodated in appropriate but simple accommodation, not the luxurious hotels that members of the public are rightly angry about and want to see us get out of as quickly as possible.
I know the Bibi Stockholm is going to start taking migrants from tomorrow. Rishi Sunak mentioned 2 cruise ships that were going to be used. What's happened to them? Apparently no port wants to take the migrants there.
Well, you're right to say that the first barge will be operational within the coming days, and that's an important step forward. I hope that will be seen as a successful way of housing people, as I say, in decent
what
but
about the
never
cruise ships, though?
accommodation. And we're in conversation with a number of other ports and hoping that we can secure those very soon. It's true that a couple of ports did back out, mostly because local Labour councils, like in Birkenhead and in Leith in Edinburgh, refused to support us.
Okay.
Very hypocritically, actually. If you look at the Leith example, that's a Labour council that had housed Ukrainian refugees on the same barge, same boat, but refused to house asylum seekers, all the time saying that they were a city of sanctuary and wanted more asylum seekers.
Is it Labour's fault that your immigration policy isn't working then?
No, but I think it's worth pointing out that Labour would be much, much worse. Labour's plan would actually see large numbers of people crossing the channel, even larger than there are today, because they just think you can grant your way out of this problem. They think that you can make
2,000 migrants crossing the channel in June.
Well, we want to see those numbers come down. I mean, as of today, the numbers are significantly lower than they were this time last year, about 15% lower. But of course, that's just the beginning. We want to see a substantial reduction. We want to stop the boats. And that's why we're taking the measures that we are. That's why we passed the Illegal Migration Act just a few weeks ago, which is probably the most robust piece of legislation on immigration in my lifetime.
Suella Braverman's talked about these lefty lawyers. There was an expose in the Daily Mail where they went undercover. They filmed immigration lawyers basically telling clients to game the system. What should happen then? Because you're talking the talk on these lawyers, but should they be issued with even bigger fines? Talking about 5% of their earnings. Surely you need to fine them more than that and close them down.
Well, you should be struck off as a lawyer if you flagrantly abuse the law, and that is what I hope will happen to those solicitors and legal representatives who've been caught by the expose by the Daily Mail. The Solicitors Regulatory Authority is taking action against them and their firms. We're saying that we want that to continue. We want to fine individuals and firms appropriately. As a former solicitor, I have been shocked by the level of abuse that I've seen in this area of the law. I'm afraid that what you've seen so far is just the tip of
But are you saying that fellow lawyer Keir Starmer is conspiring with those lawyers? Is Keir Starmer and the Labour Party conspiring with those lawyers? Because that's what Rishi Sunak seems to be suggesting in the tweet he sent out last week, and that's what Suella Braverman seems to be suggesting. Are you also suggesting that?
Well, there is evidence of that, yes. I mean, just this week, we've seen an allegation that a Labour councillor in Newcastle, who is also a legal representative, was on TikTok apparently soliciting illegal migrants to come to her, and she would help them to stay in the UK. Now, I think that would be news to her residents in Newcastle, who probably want, like I do, secure borders and controlled migration. But it is an example of what the Labour Party really thinks. And as far as I can tell, absolutely nothing has been said or done with respect to that lady.
One of our people
wrong, and that shows what Labour, behind the mask, really think about this issue.
One of our People's panellists has made the point about the pull factors to the UK. There's a reason why people come from wherever they're coming from. They come across the whole of Europe, and they still want to cross the channel to come to the UK because we're a soft touch, because we offer them too much, because we give them housing and accommodation, quite comfortable housing and accommodation, that they can come here and have a life that they can't live elsewhere. So some of the pull factors are to blame. Why don't you pull some of the pull factors?
Well, we are, Camilla. That's exactly the work that I've been doing over the last 6 months with Suella Braverman. We have changed the accommodation that people are staying in. The Labour Party say they don't like us using disused military sites and barges. They want hotels. And my postbag from Labour MPs is complaining that the accommodation isn't luxurious enough. They want us to spend more and offer more to illegal migrants. I don't think that's right. I think we have to make sure that the UK isn't perceived to be a soft touch. As you say, quite correctly, the overwhelming majority of those people coming on small boats are coming from France, from a safe country with a well-functioning asylum system. They're choosing to come to the UK, and that must be in part because of a perception that the UK is a softer touch. That's why we're changing accommodation. That's why we're making it harder to live and to work illegally in the UK.
But
there's been a 50% rise in the number of raids this year by immigration enforcement to try and close down bogus employers.
But have you got control over some of these sites? Have you got control over some of these sites? Because we've got local reports of a TB and scabies outbreak at the site in Wethersfield. You've got constituents angry about migrants being housed in their doorstep. You've also got your own MPs really cross with you personally. I've heard a lot of criticism of you personally, Mr. Jenrick, for the quote is dumping migrants in their seats and costing them their hopes of electoral success come 2024.
Well, the reason we're pursuing large sites and barges is so that we can exit the hotels. We don't want people staying in these hotels. They're very expensive and they're not appropriate. Of course, we understand that in the small number of places where these larger sites and barges are going to be located, that will pose problems and legitimate concerns for the community. And we're working very closely with councils and community groups in each of those places to try to mitigate that, providing extra money for the police and the health service, for example. But it must be right in the national interest that we house people, as other European countries do, incidentally, in large sites and on barges and vessels, rather than in hotels, which is just simply creating another pull factor to the United Kingdom.
Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.